Now that we've looked at the energy resources we have in terms of traditional and alternative energy, we are going to look at the ultimate energy that enters the earth, and that is from the sun. So we're not just looking at solar power with solar panels, we're looking at how the sun itself gets its energy. So the sun has layers just like the earth does. Starting from the very center of the sun, we have the core. Just like the earth has a core, the sun has a core. But the sun's core is a little bit different. This is where all of the energy is created in the sun. It's through a process called fusion. So they are combining hydrogen and helium in order to create energy that then ultimately travels to us through radiation. Next, you have the photosphere. Photo means light. That's why I talk about photograph. That's a graph means picture. So picture taken based on the light that's around it. And the photosphere is the surface of the sun. And just on average, it's about 6,000 to 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is what gives us all of the visible light we see. So when we talk about visible light, we're looking at the different colors. And so that is partially where this is coming from. Next, we have the chromosphere. The chromo means color. So with the chromosphere, this is the color of the sun. It's a very thin layer of very, very hot gas that appears to be red. And so when you look at, or if you looked at the sun, which I don't recommend doing without protective eyewear, the sun can appear red, and it's because of this chromosphere layer, which is about 36,000 degrees hot. Now, with the layers of the sun, you don't really need to know the temperatures. Just know what's bolded. So the chromosphere means color, and the corona, not the coronavirus, but what corona actually means is crown. And so I don't know if the coronavirus resembles a crown, but maybe it does. Maybe that's why it's called what it is. But the corona means crown, and the atmosphere of the sun, which you can see here, people think that that looks like the sun is wearing a crown, and that's why it got its name. But this is the outermost layer. It's a very thin, weak layer, but it's about 2 million degrees hot, and this is what causes the northern lights, which we will look at exactly how that happens in just a few minutes. These are some videos on the layers of the sun. If you're interested, you can watch them. So does the sun move? Well, I hope you all know the answer to this, and I hope you are all saying, yes, it does move. Because in Unit 2, we talked about how everything moves around its center of mass, which is what the barycenter is talking about. So the sun does indeed move. It's just such a slight movement that we don't really consider it much of one. So the sun's motion, it's not stationary because it's going around the barycenter, and the barycenter is created because that's what planets orbit based on the center of gravity that's going from each planet. So the sun is technically moving, but it's just a very, very slight back and forth movement, not a big one. And the orbits the solar system center of mass. That's the fill in the blank thing, just to see if you remember it. But the center of mass is created from the barycenter, or barycentric motions, the point things orbit. So make sure you're going back from your different units to review that old material. So the way the sun produces energy is through fusion. But we've already talked about fission. That's where how nuclear power plants get their energy. And these two words are very similar, but they are opposite of one another. And you need to make sure that you can keep them straight. So I remember fusion. The sun has U in it, so S-U-N, and fusion has U in it. So therefore, the sun is what's giving fusion, or the sun has fusion. Fusion is when atoms are combined together. And what specifically is combining is hydrogen in order to make helium. If you look on the periodic table, hydrogen is number 1 and helium is number 2. So you can think about basically your hydrogens are coming together to create the heliums. They add up to create that. So 4 hydrogens come together and they end up making a helium nucleus. Fission is with your power plants, and this is when atoms are split. So fusion, they're added together. Fission, they are separated. And this is, again, what goes on in your nuclear power plants, and the fuel is coming from uranium. So I remember split has the letter I in it, so split, and fission has I in it. So fusion, U like sun, and so it's combining, and then fission, split. So hopefully that can help you remember them. So how does the sun release energy? Well, we already know through radiation, but we talk about it in terms of electromagnetic radiation. And there are many different waves on this electromagnetic scale. So electromagnetic radiation is going to give different types of light with different wavelengths, and we put that on the electromagnetic spectrum. These are your different types of electromagnetic waves arranged on the spectrum. It goes from your radio waves to your gamma waves. Your visible light is what's right here, visible light waves, and this is what gives us all the color we can see. All color is based on that visible light section of this part of the sun. So your radio waves are the lowest amount of energy, and then your gamma rays are the highest. Now what you need to know, or you do need to know all of these waves, or at least be familiar enough with them that if you saw them on a list, you could say what was and what did not belong on that list. So radio waves, this is obviously what helps us with the the radio. You have your infrared, visible light, that's all your color, UV rays. Anybody remember the layer of the atmosphere that protects us against that? That would be the ozone layer located in the stratosphere. X-rays, they use these waves in order to do X-rays at the doctor. And then gamma rays. Anybody remember what gamma rays creates? The Hulk. The gamma rays is what created the Hulk. Now, actually the Hulk does not exist, but maybe gamma rays could create that. So that's a game we're not going to play. So solar radiation in the atmosphere. So this is review from Unit 3. Anybody remember how much of your energy is absorbed in the clouds? Remember, clouds is what I least expect, so it's the least number, which is 20. 30% is reflected back to space, and that leaves 50% that gets absorbed in the ground. Make sure you do remember those numbers. Okay, so when, and this is also a review, but when the sun's rays hit the earth, half of it's absorbed by the land. Remember, the land is going to heat faster than water, and the land will cool down faster than water. And then how is vegetation going to use it? Through photosynthesis, and that's what we'll look at next. So photosynthesis, you should all be familiar with this. Photo means light, and synthesis means to make. So when you look at photosynthesis, the actual word is talking about how you are making energy from the light of the sun. So this is the way that all of our, I wish we could go outside and stand in the sun and get the energy we need, but we can't do that. Only a plant can do it. So plants are what allows life to really occur on Earth, because it takes the energy from the sun and it puts it in a usable form. If we didn't have plants that would get energy from the sun and make it usable to us, then we wouldn't have the energy in order to live. So with plants, we all know that a plant needs, let's see if we have, here's my little leaf. So the things you got to put in, or I'll make it a flower. The things you need for a plant is sunlight. So sun has to go into the plant, and a plant needs water. And what else would a plant need besides sun and water? Anybody know the gas that it breathes in? It's opposite of us, so it's going to take in carbon dioxide. And what the plant's going to make, the waste product, is oxygen, and then it's going to make sugar, because that sugar is food. The specific kind of sugar that a plant is making is what we call glucose. So glucose. Now, you need to be, this is a formula for photosynthesis, and you need to be familiar with it. You don't have to completely memorize it, but you probably already know it. You already know plants breathe in carbon dioxide and they take in water. Well, it's going to yield, or basically rearrange those things in order to make C6H12O6, which is glucose. That's the chemical formula for it. And then it breathes out oxygen. So don't focus on memorizing this equation. They're not going to try to trick you up with the numbers that are involved in it. But if you're looking at different equations trying to figure out which one is correct for photosynthesis, just think through, what do I know a plant needs? Well, I know a plant needs water, and I know a plant takes in carbon dioxide. I therefore know a plant is going to make a sugar, and it's also going to produce oxygen, because that's what we breathe. Now, if you can't remember C6H12O6 is sugar, sometimes they may write it, but other times they actually put this. then just make sure you're not picking something that has something random in it. Now, if you look over here, you have carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. That means the only thing over here should be carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. As long as you're not picking something weird with nitrogen in it or argon, you should be good. Because in chemical formulas, all they do is take these elements and rearrange it to create this side. So you don't create anything new, you just rearrange. So again, they take in the water, they take in the carbon dioxide to create a sugar called glucose and an oxygen. So that is photosynthesis. Anybody know why it is that leaves change colors in the fall? Well, if you don't, I'm going to tell you. So inside of every leaf, there are chloroplasts. Chloroplast is the organelle that cells use to make to do photosynthesis through. And in those chloroplasts are little pigments called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is what's green, and that's why all of our leaves and our plants look green. Now, our deciduous trees, which are trees that lose their leaves, they hibernate in the winter, so they take in all their chloroplasts to save energy. And when they take all those chloroplasts and absorb it into themselves, they're basically taking the chloroplasts from the leaves and putting it into like their trunk. As they absorb it into themselves, they are removing the chlorophyll, which looks green. And when they remove that green pigment, they are just leaving behind the reds and yellows and oranges. So that's not created, it's just already there. We can't see it because the green just overpowers it. But when chlorophyll is taken into the tree, it leaves these other things behind, and that's what gives us the colors. And the reason the leaves fall off is because without the chloroplast, they can't do photosynthesis, so all the leaves die and they fall to the bottom. So in case you've ever wondered that, there's your little fun fact of the day. So where is north? I can't tell you where that is because I have no idea where you are standing. But if you download a compass, then you can figure out where north is. North is not up, so do not point up into the sky. That's going higher, but if you're moving north, that's the direction you would actually walk or drive in order to get to Michigan or the North Pole. But you can look up where north is depending where you are. If you're curious how a compass works, it's there, but it's based on what we call a magnetic field. And so the magnetic field is actually created by the Earth's core. I told you in Unit 4, we are going to talk about, when we talked about the different layers of the Earth, that knowing that the core creates the Earth's magnetic field is very, very important, and it's what allows us to all still be alive today and that we come back to it. Well, now we are coming back to it. So the core of the Earth creates this magnetic field, and the magnetic field travels out through the core, through the mantle, through the crust, through the atmosphere, into outer space, and it makes this butterfly shape around the Earth. So you can picture it as like a little butterfly. And this is what stops solar winds that protect us. Solar winds would completely destroy the planet. So if we did not, and all life on it, so if we did not have this magnetic field that went from the core of the Earth all the way out to outer space and surrounds the Earth, then we wouldn't be able to survive. And so that's very important. So solar flares, they're basically like a giant bomb that goes off on the sun. And it travels through the space and it surrounds the Earth completely. But our magnetic field protects us from these solar winds. And so actually, one of the most dangerous things that exists, these solar flares, is what gives us one of the most beautiful things that you see on the Earth. I'm going to go back a slide. The solar flares, they hit this magnetic field, and the solar flares get absorbed, and they all get moved towards the poles of the core, which is also what gives us the poles of the Earth. And they start to make these beautiful colors called the northern lights or the auroras. So if you ever go to the North or the South Pole, then you'll see the northern or the southern lights. And if you see them, you can think that that beautiful sight you see is created because there's this dangerous blast from the sun that would completely kill all life on Earth. But our magnetic field coming from the core goes out to outer space and it protects us from it. So solar winds would remove the ozone layer, so that would remove all protection that we'd have from ultraviolet radiation. And it also would get rid of our atmosphere. and that way we wouldn't be able to breathe. So that's why it's so important to protect us. And it also would make life to the point it's not livable, because it would just basically make it like Mars, where it would be too warm. Now this video you need to watch, okay? Please watch it, because I cannot do the magnetic field justice in the way I'm explaining it. This video is very, very cool. People tend to really enjoy it, but it has magnetically tuned, not microscopes, oh my gosh, what are they called? Satellites, magnetically tuned satellites that actually show you the solar flare leaving the sun and going to the earth, and how it goes in and it makes the northern lights. So if you will watch that video, you can fast forward through the beginning of it and just watch how that actually works, because it's really neat to think about how that's occurring right now at this moment, and we don't think anything of it. It just gives us this beautiful sight. But that is all for the sun. So I will go ahead and end this video, and then that's it for Unit 7. And then we will have our practice questions, a study guide, and our test.